It's going to take you, the people, to institute what you want. To educate the people everywhere what we want, what we design, what we need. To educate the people to the need for change. To educate the people to the basic political desires and needs of people as a whole.
Hey, so I wanted to talk about this Georgia militia secession because it is very important, specifically on the remnants of the, let's say, American nationalist movement fostered by Trump in the post-Trump era. So this story broke February 4th, 2020, titled Militia Alliance in Georgia Signals New Phase for Extremist Paramilitaries. So the leader of a private paramilitary group, which is closely affiliated to Marjorie Taylor Greene, the QAnon House Rep, red flag right off the bat, has publicly stated this private paramilitary group has formed alliances with other far-right groups to advocate for Georgia's secession from the Union, as a result of the arrest of right-wing insurrectionists who attended and participated in the violent riot at the nation's capital. According to researchers who study the far right, they have observed the political unrest that has led to the violent January 6th insurrection on the Capitol. This has been perpetuated and exacerbated by baseless conspiracies accusing the 2020 presidential election as fraudulent. These researchers also have observed that this has pushed far-right militias to build coalitions. These Georgia 3% martyrs have so far allied with the American Brotherhood of Patriots and American Patriots USA, the leader of which has had past ties to literal neo-Nazi / white supremacist hate groups and high-ranking individuals. So let's talk about the legality of militias, because it's a very interesting phenomenon. The Supreme Court decided in District of Columbia v. Heller in 2008 many precedents, but I mostly wanted to zero in on a point made within the majority opinion delivered by Justice Scalia regarding the Second Amendment's interpretation. This specific point argued, the information I got from oyas.com, everyone should check that out. Super informative website. So anyways, Scalia said to read the amendment as limiting the right to bear arms only to those in a government military force will be to create exactly the type of state-sponsored force against which the amendment was meant to protect people. This essentially translates to the Second Amendment does not prevent the prohibition of private paramilitary organizations. Now, all 50 states prohibit private unauthorized militias and military units from engaging in activities reserved for the state militia, including law enforcement activities, which is ironic since the law enforcement in Kenosha will welcome private militiamen. So, in accordance to Georgia law, it is illegal for groups of people to organize as private militias without permission from the state. It is considered a misdemeanor for any body of men other than the organized militia components of the armed forces of the United States and bodies of the police and state constabulary to associate themselves together as a military unit or parade or demonstrate in public with firearms. So it is also a felony in Georgia to either teach, train, or demonstrate to any other person the use, application, or making of any illegal firearm, dangerous weapon, explosive, or incendiary device capable of causing injury or death to persons either directly or through a writing or over or through a computer or computer network if the person teaching, training, or demonstrating knows, has reason to know, or intends that such will be unlawfully employed for use in or in furtherance of a civil disorder, riot, or insurrection. Right. It is also a felony in Georgia to assemble with one or more persons for the purpose of being taught, trained, or instructed in the use of any illegal firearm, dangerous weapon, explosive, or incendiary device capable of causing injury or death to persons, knowing, having reason to know, or intending that such teaching, training, or instruction will be unlawfully employed for use in or in furtherance of a civil disorder, riot, or insurrection. Now, let's get back to Georgia. So, it was Georgia law, whatever. Here are some admissions to the violations of these laws from these Georgia 3% martyrs, of them violating the laws just laid out. So, the reason this is all very dangerous is because a lot of laws are not enforced immediately or even when they are violated multiple years or decades later. There's usually no accountability for the state. So, state actors. So people speculate Trump refusing to condemn right-wing paramilitary groups at the infamous debate between himself and President Joseph Biden is a big reason as to why these paramilitary groups can go out and violate literal state laws. I personally would say it is because Trump has put the American nationalist interests to the forefront of all Americans, and since these groups are organizing via the worship and inspiration of their god Emperor Trump, they are all groups representing a former president who symbolizes American nationalism more than any other president in modern history. American nationalism plays into the interest of the state, and I will get into that later, but I want to share my personal position regarding whether or not private militias should be illegal. So personally, I agree with a part of the dissent delivered by Justice Stevens on District of Columbia v. Heller in 2008, where he argued the Second Amendment's purpose was specifically in relation to state militias, and now I will get into my theoretical reasons on why I agree with that interpretation slash position specifically. So, if you flat out do not and refuse to ever acknowledge the existence of American systemic racism, I can't even say that with a straight face because it just feels so dumb, which is probably like 0 to 1% of my audience, or even like 10 viewers or 1 viewer, whatever, then you won't accept anything I say after this. So, socioeconomic conditions maintain environments where it is much harder for marginalized groups of Americans to do the same things as American nationalists, including militia forming and sustainable maintenance of militias. Now, since the purpose of the National Guard at the state and federal levels is to serve as the first line of defense, what that talking point fails to explicitly outline is the National Guard is supposed to defend threats to American interests. Since American interests have many despicably inhumane characteristics which correspond to those apparent upon America's founding, which amongst the decent list contains aspects of white/Western supremacy and capitalist elitism, yeah, that's just American nationalism, and a few aspects of it. So this first line of defense that the state militia is supposed to basically be formed and maintained for the purpose of is really the first line of defense against threats to white supremacy and capital elitism. This is why people are quick to label others like BLM and Antifa as communists, because social progress has literally equaled communism for these people since the Cold War, since communism was popularized. Just like every civil rights leader, any group of people advocating for social progress threatens the tradition of American nationalists and gives them fodder to throw at the culture war being exclusively fought by the right, because they take all accumulated social progress since the coining of the term culture war and add it to the list of leftist assaults on the right under the guise of an imaginary culture war since this culture war. So now, this is where we encounter dangerous territory, because with the obvious subtlety that American, usually majority white, nationalist militias are probably 99.8% more likely to be formed and sustained than any militias made by a marginalized group in America, that means the overwhelming majority of militias in America presently and in the future, without looking up logistics, will be serving American nationalist interests and therefore increase the number of forces of the state-sponsored militias, aka the National Guard, the State National Guard. This would then exploit these private actors while avoiding having to put them on payroll. This then eliminates the existence of liability on behalf of state-sponsored actors and accountability on behalf of the state. With an increased size in a state military force which can be assembled at will, this means civilians would be working with the state law enforcement to terrorize already marginalized groups in America. So, a clear-cut example of this is the Kenosha shooting involving Kyle Rittenhouse. He was running around with a Boogaloo Boy patrolling Kenosha the night of the shooting, as can be attributed to the reporting of numerous sources. Deaths were caused by these private actors, LARPing as militiamen, and the state had to face absolutely no pushback. The only pushback is against Kyle Rittenhouse and other Boogaloo Boys individually. Now, obviously, there's pushback, but I'm talking about amongst these, like when it happened, the whole discourse was circulating around Kyle Rittenhouse's self-defense case, and not about BLM in Kenosha actually or Antifa coalition groups in Kenosha actually succeeding in any police reform, like there's or any protests. So So in theory, allowing the state to restrict the formation of militias is clearly against what I believe, but at the same time, based on what I just explained in this instance, I personally believe that the state should outlaw the formation of private militias. So that's my take. And just remember, remnants of the Trump American nationalist, Western nationalist movement. We need to watch out for these people. We cannot ally with the Boogaloo Boys. That's so silly. Jimmy Dore, people need to stop listening to that guy, because yeah, he's a bad apple or bad actor, bad faith. Well, I don't know. See you later.